Okay, guys, so now that you've got this idea that we're going to start strength training, because you know how to start strength training, you know how to build a strength training program. One of the biggest benefits of strength training is to minimize injury. And so what we're going to talk about today is how we can optimize our training, our strength training and other training that we do to minimize injury risk. And here we're going to talk about two types of injury. In the first type of injury we're going to talk about is injury to the muscle. The second type of injury we're going to talk about is injury to the tendon. And when the tendon gets injured, how do we reverse that? Because really, most people think that you can't reverse a tendon injury, that you're going to be stuck with a scar. And what I'm going to show you today is that you can not only prevent those muscle pulls, but you can also fix tendon injuries once you have them. All right, so by the end of this series of videos, you should be able to describe the role that a tendon performs in the body. You draw the stress strain curve of a normal tendon and explain how that curve changes with speed. And this is a process called viscoelasticity. If you move really quickly, your tendons are stiffer than if you move really slowly. That's why when you walk and you see people doing yoga, they're always moving slowly into the positions that they're going to stretch in, because by moving in slowly, this tendon is less stiff and you can get further movement through your joints. You should be able to explain how stiffness of a tendon is dependent on activity. So when we're inactive because we're in a cast, or when we're sitting a lot, like we're now stuck at home, and there's a lot more people sitting for longer periods of time, this is actually causing an increase in muscle problems or musculoskeletal problems, because as we sit for longer periods of time, our tendon gets stiffer. That's going to translate into more likelihood of muscle pulls and other muscle injuries. You'll be able to define passive and active stiffness. You'll be able to state which types of exercise increase and which types of exercise decrease stiffness. You'll be able to describe a nutritional intervention that can increase collagen synthesis, and describe a program that not so much concerned with muscle pulls, but is now really focused on the tendon and being able to reverse tendinopathy. All right, so let's start with what a tendon is. This is your standard picture from a textbook. You can have a bone here, muscle. Tendon is the white part, and basically what it says is tendons bind muscle to bone. As if that's the only thing it does. It just sits there. It's an elastic band. You pull on it and it's going to recoil. It's not as simple as that. We're going to show you today that basically these tendons have an important role in protecting that whole muscle from injury. And the way that a tendon protects a muscle from injury is it's going to have a low stiffness at one end and a high stiffness at the other. And the way that that's going to work is, if you were to tell an engineer that he has to attach some chewing gum, say, to a cement block, and then we're going to pull on the chewing gum a lot, he's going to freak out, because he knows that the interface is going to fail really quickly. Because all you have to do is start pulling on the chewing gum, it's going to start to stretch, and because the chewing gum is stretchy and the cement is not stretchy, chewing gum is just going to peel right off of there. And that's really what we would worry about here, where we have a tissue like our muscle that's really compliant, really stretchy, really floppy, and a tissue like bone that's as hard as rocks in our body. So now you've got a tissue that's really stiff in bone, a tissue that's really flexible or compliant in muscle. If you attach a compliant tissue to a stiff tissue, you're going to fail at that interface, unless you have a really incredible tissue in between them, and that tissue is the tendon. All right, so the way this works is, if we just take a look at that muscle and the tendon, if you look at the tendon close to the muscle and you apply a stress, or you pull it, that's a load. So this is the amount of load that we're putting on the tendon, and this is the amount of stretch we get from that tendon. If we look at, this is all one tendon. This is the red, the dark red here, is if you just look towards the muscle, in the tendon, but just at the muscle end of the tendon, what you're going to find is it's stretchy. If you look really close to the bone, but not in the bone, but close to the bone, it's going to be super stiff. And that's really the beauty of a tendon, is its mechanics vary along its length. Near the muscle, it's stretchy. Near the bone, it's stiff. And along its length, it increases its stiffness. And so as it goes from muscle to bone, now it's slowly causing a transition from compliant to stiff. And what it does in doing so is it acts like a shock absorber. So if you've been in a car with bad shock absorbers, there's two things that can happen. Either you're bouncing along like you're in a turtle, or you're on some sort of a water device where you hit a bump and now you're just going to bounce forever because you don't ever absorb the impact. Or you hit that hole, and now you bam, and now it just feels like that whole force just went up your spine and it's just crushed you because there's no protection between you and the impact. What the tendon does is it absorbs the impact, and it makes it so that whole muscle is protected from the impact. It's the shock absorber that allows you to protect your muscle.